Hey, it's Dave from the Camera Store. Today we're going to talk about 3 cameras I recommend for shooting landscape. So let's talk about landscape photography. I mean, it's pretty simple. You find a nice vista, a nice view, a nice lake like we're here today. This is Ghost Lake just outside of Calgary. But landscape photography is pretty simple, right? Just sort of point the camera in the right direction, take a picture. Or is it? Today, we're just going to talk about the cameras that I would recommend using. Working for the Camera Store, I get asked all the time, what do I recommend for this scenario or that scenario? So I'm coming up with sort of a good, better, best solution for what I'd recommend for cameras that I would personally take out and shoot landscape with. There are a lot of cameras to choose from on the market, so my first pick is a very budget-friendly camera. This is the Canon R50, so it's brand new from Canon. It's only been around for a little while. It comes in at a very good price point. In Canada, it's just a little over $1,000. Now I can already picture the comments that we're going to be getting down below. People are like, why such a small camera with such a small resolution, with such a small sensor? But it packs a real punch, and it gives you all the options you want to really start to explore all kinds of photography, including landscape. So what I like about the Canon system is that they make it very user-friendly. This camera especially is designed for first-time users. All the really quick control dials are there, including a full automatic mode here. So if I'm not sure what I'm doing, I can certainly put it on automatic and start taking some decent quality landscapes right off the bat. But if I want to, the ability to go with the full manual or anywhere in between is there. The sensor itself is a crop sensor, so it is a little bit smaller. We are going to see a difference when it comes to dynamic range. There's going to be more on that a little bit later on. As we dig deeper into this camera, yeah, it doesn't have the best viewfinder. It does have the articulating screen, but it doesn't have a big battery. Lots of the factors that kind of go back and forth, but for its price point, this little camera packs a big punch. So as much as I like the Canon R50 as an entry-level budget-friendly camera to work with, this next camera is not going to surprise anybody, especially if you are in the Nikon family. This is the Nikon Z7 II, and it's a fantastic camera for landscape for a bunch of different reasons. One, right off the bat, I'm not going to talk about resolution or dynamic range right now. I'm going to talk about the build quality of this camera. It steps you up, so I'm not worried about dropping this in the snow or being caught in the rain with this camera. It's fully weather sealed, which is a really nice option and quite practical if you are a landscape photographer. Now, from a usability standpoint, this camera is substantially bigger than the R50, so it does weigh a little bit more as well, but we get a much nicer electronic viewfinder to work with. We have a much better resolution screen on the back. We have a much bigger battery, which is going to last us much longer throughout the day, but the heart and soul of this camera is about the sensor. So a 46 megapixel full frame sensor, so it's significantly bigger than the crop sensor on the R50. And what that gives us is much better low light performance, but more importantly for landscape is a much broader dynamic range, the ability to capture light and dark within a single photo. But this camera can deliver 46 megapixels worth of resolution. That's a whole lot more than you're getting with the R50, so we can blow things up much bigger because of that. Now the R50 comes in at a very attractive price point, of course. The Nikon certainly steps you up that aspect as well. With its kit 24-70 f4 lens, we're looking at about $4,600 Canadian, so that's a serious step up as far as the budget goes. However, I think it's well worth it with what this camera can deliver. All right, now this one's a bit of a guilty pleasure. If money was no object and I won the lottery or made better life decisions, this would be my camera of choice for shooting landscapes. This is the Fuji GFX 100S with a 20-35 lens on it. Now, it doesn't come as a kit, you gotta buy them separately, and it comes in at $11,000. However, this is a fantastic combination for shooting landscape with. The resolution I talk about is intoxicating for sure. Having that much resolution allows me to really crop much more aggressively. And I love the fact that I can really zoom into details with it, but it's the dynamic range that this camera has. It's the best of the 3 different cameras we're talking about. I also really like that it's a medium format camera, so the sensor is even bigger than full frame. We get a little different aesthetic to the image and how it looks. Now, there's a lot to really love about this camera when it comes to landscape photography, but it's interesting that it's not as good as the Nikon in a bunch of different aspects. However, it's the dynamic range of this camera that I really like, plus that medium format sensor that's much bigger than a full frame sensor. The aesthetic you get from that looks fantastic. So for me, this is my top end when it comes to shooting landscape. Now, how do these cameras compare side by side? We're going to talk about dynamic range, resolution next. All right, so we kind of have a crazy setup here, and I'm going to talk about resolution first. Now, in here we have the R50, the Z7, and the GFX 100. So we have 24 megapixels, 46 megapixels, and 100 megapixels. What difference does it make in a scene like this? Well, off in the distance there is a house, which I would love to own, but if you take a look at the shots here, this is with the R50. Everything looks pretty decent with this shot, and if we zoom in to 100% on that house and see kind of what detail we're getting, it's not bad. However, if we step it up to the full frame sensor of the Z7 Mark II, we do get double the resolution. It's a 46 megapixel camera, and we do have a little bit better optics on there, I'll give it that, but the image is much sharper. Then we step it up to one level further to the GFX 100S. We have a 100 megapixels to play with great quality glass. Zoom in on this, and you can see the difference in detail between a 24, 46, and 100 megapixel camera. Now, if I'm only planning on putting my photos up onto Instagram, for instance, where I'm only going to look at it on a phone or a small device, all these are going to look really good, and the resolution doesn't really matter that much. However, the higher the resolution, the more cropping I can do without losing enough quality that I can't print it, for instance. And the GFX 100 especially allows me to crop multiple different ways and still retain sufficient resolution. Now, the next thing I want to talk about that's very important when it comes to landscape photography is the dynamic range of a sensor. Now, in this particular scene, we have a nice shade from the trees here, but also we have the hillside over there that's lit by the sun. So how do these cameras handle that exposure? Now, I've exposed my histogram so I have a little bit of gap on either end. However, take a look at when I try and boost those shadows with the R50. It is the lowest dynamic range. We start to see a little bit more noise, and we can't really pull those shadows out as much as I'd like. We can't crush the highlights as much as I'd like either. It certainly is the more limiting of the three cameras. However, it certainly isn't bad at all. Take a look at the Z7 file, and we have definitely more range to work with. As I boost the shadows and crush the highlights, we certainly have more range to work with, and it's much more pleasing to look at. We step it up to the GFX 100 on the end, and it definitely has the most dynamic range, although it is subtle. It's not as drastic as you might think, but we have great detail, great look to it, and certainly the best dynamic range of the three images. Today we've been talking about three cameras that I really like shooting landscape with, and there's a whole host of other things that involved when it comes to shooting landscape. All the accessories, the different kind of tripods that we're using, on filters, and the quality of optics you can put on those cameras. But I really want to get a conversation started with you with regards to which camera is best suited for you. Whether it's the more budget-friendly Canon EOS R50 or a camera that's like it, that gives you a really good bang for the buck for very budget-friendly people who are just getting into photography. Or if you're ready to step into that Z7 and really jump into the higher image quality with a much better dynamic range and higher resolution, or if you're just going to throw everything at it and go with the GFX 100S with a 20-35 lens. It's a gorgeous combination, but it's important to figure out what works best for you and what's going to give you the results that you want. I, of course, want to know what you guys think of my three choices for landscape photography cameras. Now, do you agree with them? Would you choose a different one? Would you throw one of these out the window completely? Let me know in the comments down below. Follow us both on Instagram. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll catch you again next time. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to check out more of our recent content, click up here. And if you're a Canadian and you want to support local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.